Welcome to Inflection Point Podcast, where we cultivate change from the inside out as we ponder the Cairo question. Will Cairo have to protest in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? We stand on the belief that dismantling racism goes beyond laws and legislation or politics and economics. Here, anti-racism activation is presented as an inside job where personal transformation and accountability impact social change. So take a seat at the anti-racism activation table with Inflection Point Podcast.
So good evening, everyone, or this good afternoon, depending on where you are. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the latest episode of Inflection Point Podcast, where we are dedicated to anti-racism activation and the art of listening in authentic conversation, engagement, and action. I am your host, Anita Russell, and here's a quick hello from co-host Mavis. I'm sorry, I'm so used to saying Mavis and Gail. Only Gail is with us this evening.
Hi, I'm Gail Hunter, and welcome to this evening's show.
So before we get started, I do want to give a quick shout out to Mavis Bauman. She's not able to join us this evening because she is traveling in Rwanda. So, hey, Mavis, if you're listening. So in 2025, we turned our attention towards community engagement and the grassroots of change. So throughout the year, we've been exploring stories and strategies and successes of community-driven movements that are making a difference. So some of our episodes have focused on theory, others have focused on some practical examples, and it allows our audience to gain insights that they can apply in their own real-world community engagement efforts. So in our last episode, we had a really incredible discussion of strategies for youth empowerment and community engagement. We recognize these 5 core principles and strategies. Youth as partners and not just as participants, connecting to their lives and their interests, building skills and confidence, ensuring mentorship and support, and making it fun and purposeful. And so in that same episode, we also explored 2 organizations that center the future of our youth as it relates to community engagement. The first was an organization called Toffler Associates, which is a very future-focused organization. And the second is an organization called YES. And YES is an acronym for Youth Enrichment Services. And we are very blessed to have Denise Jones, who is the educational consultant at YES. And we're going to have her as our guest today, and talk a little bit more about that organization, its roots, and who she is and the role that she plays. So Denise, welcome to our show. Welcome to Inflection Point Podcast.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. So I'll just do a quick intro, a little bit of a bio on who Denise is, and then we'll just dive right into the conversation. Denise Jones is the daughter of 2 incredibly selfless, dedicated, and passion-driven educators who made personal sacrifices for herself and some other family members to attend South Fayette High School. And her academic trajectory is what allowed her to access honors and AP courses, where she developed an authentic love for learning and began to see herself as a Black woman capable of pursuing post-secondary education. So she did go on to Allegheny College, and when she finished her undergraduate studies in economics and minoring in Black studies, she also was awarded 4 prestigious academic honors and graduated magna cum laude. So that's very, very impressive. Later, she applied for Teach for America, where she met incredible young people with poise and promise, but without the resources and the opportunities to display their brilliance. And so this experience helped Denise to understand both the joys and the limitations of teaching, particularly in these bureaucratic systems. So with that kind of understanding, she was able to transition into graduate school at Teachers College, where she earned her master's degree, hoping to find that panacea for those classroom ills that she had experienced. So in search for more solutions, she decided to work at her father's community-based nonprofit organization, which brings us to Youth Enrichment Services, to help young people become their best resource. She is now pursuing a PhD in education and psychology from the University of Michigan, where she is building a post-secondary pipeline for youth of color. Now in her 4th year, Denise is a doctoral candidate, yay, preparing to write her dissertation, which explores how contextual and environmental factors influence Black youth orientation towards the future and advancement towards adulthood. So that is a very impressive bio. But what I'd like to do now is kind of jump into and have Denise share her personal story.
Well, thank you so much for the invite and the opportunity to be here with you all this evening. When I was reflecting on my personal story, I just once again cannot forget about the selfless types of sacrifices that my parents have made educationally to help support my sisters and I, really advancing our kind of educational acumen and capacities. And so one of the things that I'll share is that my sisters and I previously attended Manchester Youth Development Center, or MAX, and unfortunately, there were a lot of great things about that sort of academic environment. I think culturally and socially, there were a lot of ways that that space was feeding our kind of our personal being. But when we sort of transitioned to the South Fayette context, we realized that we really were far behind and that we were unfortunately not up to par with our peers. And so it was quite a struggle to get on track academically in this new environmental setting. So at the time, my parents had been very immersed in their school context. My dad was a professor, my mom was a high school teacher. And so they were really immersed in their career endeavors. So it was unfortunately a little bit difficult to lean on them fully to kind of help us ourselves get out of this sort of academic space that we were in. And they have been great providers for us. And as I mentioned, really making those sacrifices. But in terms of the kind of academic work that it was going to take for us to get on grade level required more than just like my parents' love and sacrifices, but it really was going to require shifts in a lot of different resources and supports. And so we definitely were able to tune into a lot of resources that our school offered, but also the YES context became even more critical and valuable for my sisters and I. One, it continued to be that place of cultural connection, but two, I got a chance to get connected to a mentor, and I got a chance to work with some tutors through YES that really helped me overcome some of my academic ills and challenges. And there I connected with a peer of mine who was a Black young woman, and she was currently the valedictorian of her school, was at a white school district. And so it was through her journey, through her story, that I was able to see myself differently as not a struggling student, unable to kind of compete with my peers and really be successful, but as a student that could eventually be someone that obtained success academically and had a lot of different types of experiences. And so through that relationship that was cultivated in the YES space, one, I was able to, find a dear friend, but two, I was able to see a model from someone that was doing it and that was going to take me by the hand to kind of guide me through that process. And I think that speaks to the kind of power of peer mentoring that took place within the YES context. And so through those kind of positive peer relationships, I was able to shift my own, the way that I was viewing myself, the things that I thought were possible for myself. And then I think obviously on top of the support my parents offered in the school district, we were able to really continue to kind of see ourselves growing from that place of kind of challenge and despair. And I was able to, pursue college and think about myself as someone that was capable of, learning and growing and advancing knowledge. I'll say that, my dad always invited me to come back and intern in the yes space. And unfortunately, I had some challenges in that space. I really struggled to figure out ways to support the students. I think I was really energized about the work, but when I started to see myself, some of the really stark contrasts and challenges that the young people were facing in the yes context, I got pretty dismayed and pretty hindered and jarred by kind of what I was noticing. So I was doing a lot of work trying to help young people. And I realized that students weren't reading on grade level, that they were struggling to do some of the basic kind of summer enrichment projects that we had tasked for the students. And so I was like, what is going on? How are these students almost in high school or graduating high school and not able to read and write on grade level, that aren't completing sentences and just really struggling? And so, I developed a tech lab, I developed a writing lab, and I said, I'm determined to help these students in the ways that I can with my capacity. And I think it was hard for me to see the return on that investment. It was hard for me to see myself as like really making a difference. And so I kind of vowed to my dad, like, hey, I appreciate the opportunity, but like, I'm never going to do this again. Like, this is just really difficult work. I don't see myself really making the kind of considerable change that I was expecting. So I had kind of given up in that space. And I said, I'm going to look for other opportunities. And I'm not sure that I'll stick with yes, even though I'm grateful for what the space has been for me and even the experiences that I've had. So I kept like looking for internship opportunities. I kept looking for other things, and everything kind of led me back to yes. Unfortunately, fortunately, I couldn't get away from kind of the yes influence and the yes opportunities. So I came back and was an instructor and facilitator. I went on to do Teach for America, and even in those summers, I would come back and work with students in yes. And it just was really drawn to the kind of unique community-based context that yes was situated in, and just the things that I was seeing that were really productive and really helpful. Really changed my mind and perspective about kind of that once really difficult work that I had mentioned. When I went on to grad school, I thought, once again, that policy was going to be this sort of panacea. It's like, okay, I went to teach for a while. There were challenges in that space, but maybe if I approach policy, like that's really where we'll see the difference with some of the changes that need to be made. So I went all the way throughout my graduate program, and I think it was the last course, and I was like, you know what, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do federal policy, So I spent $60,000 on this master's degree, feeling like, you know what, I don't even want to do this work. So I called my dad and kind of had that epiphany of like, you know what, I don't think I want to pursue this degree any further or really utilize it in the ways that I intended. I just want to come back to yes and just kind of work for the summer. And then I will go and travel the world. I'll go to travel to some African countries. I'll just do some kind of finding of myself, and then I'll figure it out. But unfortunately, fortunately, 3 months turned into about 4 years of real hard work, real passion work. I mean, it was so exciting to return to yes. It was that homecoming experience. And I think what I was missing were just the tools. I was frustrated about the limitations of my own skill sets and kind of toolbox, but it was through my graduate training and through my time in the classroom and through all these rich experiences that I was really building a toolbox to be a change maker within that yes context. So I was able to come back and really see myself differently, drawing on the skill sets. And a lot of what I learned in the classroom context and the graduate kind of laboratory was so useful for me in the yes space. So I was very excited about being able to come back and try to apply those unique skills in the yes space for the students, that they felt worth it, it felt important. And so that kind of brought me back to the yes space. I worked tirelessly, and that's kind of where we met. Anita, trying to find ways to create learning experiences for students in different ways, and to really push them in the research process, to help them think about themselves as leaders and researchers and as learners that were capable of like really doing things beyond their known capacities. I think it was in that space that I was able to see, like, wait a minute, there's actually something really unique about these young people. And no matter what their test scores say, and even what their educators and instructors say, like, there's something so unique and distinct about these young people that we're not tapping into. So I think that helped me shift my perspective and see myself differently in relation to the young people. And so we just accomplished a lot together. I mean, it was really amazing, the type of project and work we were doing with students. And I think it was in that space that I really was able to get a love for, facilitating and teaching and growing young people and giving them unique experiences and helping to see the role that YES was playing in their development was just so critical for me to observe. So then after a 4-year kind of period, my dad said, like, okay, now it's time, like, don't get too comfortable. It's time to kind of get back and continue to grow your skills. And you've done all you can do for YES at this point with the skills that you have. Go out and, continue to build your toolbox through the PhD program and see what you can do to kind of continue to elevate YES, continue to grow grow my own infrastructure and capacity. And, YES will be here is what he said. YES will always be here. So I've continued to come back to YES. I've published a lot of work with my colleagues there. I've continued to come back and really play an important role in kind of shaping the programming and, kind of research apparatus and profile and continue to help us build our capacity as a small community-based nonprofit. But it has just been the joy to kind of see YES grow. I know when I left for school, we probably had a budget of about $800,000, and we really were small nonprofit. And now we're tipping over $2.5 million in our budget and just doing a lot of great work. So a lot of that was based on the kind of skills I was able to develop to support YES and going after federal grants and continuing to build our program profile and build our research capacity for new opportunities. So it's just amazing to see how much YES has grown and how much we continue to play an important role in the ecosystem of young people's learning experiences, employment opportunities, and just enrichment experiences overall. So I'll stop there. And then I think I can invite questions, but that's sort of some of the journey that I wanted to reflect on with you all.
Yeah, and that was amazing. As I listened to your story, it's one of those full circle kind of stories where you started off in one place, had your own experiences, but then when you were in the YES space, not only were you getting those experiences for yourself, but you are also growing and developing to be that individual who brings those types of experiences to other people, other young people. So, I mean, I'm not in your head or your space or anything like that, but it almost seems like as you were describing it, that as you were getting more involved in your learning and then coupling that with YES, that you started to see Denise in these young people.
Absolutely.
Right? That's something that really, really came across really strong as you were describing your story. So I'm going to take a minute here just to kind of give our audience a little bit more a context in what YES is all about, like philosophically and all of that. So YES provides socially and economically at-risk youth the opportunity to achieve success through participation in mentorship, education, and enrichment programs. And they do that through these three key things: empowering youth through mentorship, education, advocacy, and exposure, enriching students' educational, social, cultural, and workforce experiences, which is kind of the piece that I got exposed to with the Earn and Learn program that particular summer when I had the opportunity to work with you. And then finally, serving local and surrounding Pittsburgh community students and families. So the thing that kind of appealed to me is the way it saw things very holistically. So it didn't just see the students in isolation. It saw the students, their families, and community as this conglomerate, if you will, that everything was kind of merged together. So when you think about all the things that I just said, how does that show up for you in terms of engaging young people in community change efforts, that motivation, that proactivity? How does all that show up in the YES work that you do? And then I'd like to have Gail make some comments as well after you answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, it's interesting because I would answer this question differently now that I'm sort of, considering myself a developmental psychologist and have a better understanding of motivation and what you need to do to really move students and push them. But I think a lot of what we do is kind of what I've described in terms of how to move students from feeling like, can I be here? Do I have anything, to offer to the place of really seeing themselves as leaders and community change agents? So a lot of that does have to do with thinking about how students see themselves, how they position themselves, and then how they then can really believe in themselves and cultivate their own, kind of skill sets and capacity. But a lot of it deals with seeing themselves differently before we can get to the point of really seeing the students really actively engage in research and community change kind of work. A lot of it is kind of getting them invested in feeling like they can see themselves differently than who they really are. Or who other people have told them they are. And so I think that that's one of the things that's really unique about Yes is that we spend time getting to know the students, understanding their intrinsic motivations, understanding the things that really move them. Then how can we help them see themselves differently? How do we see them reimagine possibilities for themselves, reshape their self-concepts, reframe their identities in ways that really align with, being individuals that could be change agents in their communities. So a lot of that work is the deep work that's like so critical to seeing that shift in students that then, changing their environments or, becoming, kind of those leaders within their community spaces. So a lot of it really deals with that kind of personal work that is necessary to get them to even think about, like, why does this work matter? And why should I be the one leading some of that work? And what role do I want to play? So we do, I think, Yes does a lot of work of one, building the holistic kind of nourishment aspects. Like, you can't do anything for kids until they feel like they have, it's kind of the basic Maslow hierarchy of needs. Like, until their basic needs are met, until we're able to speak to the kind of nourishment needs that they have, like, it's hard to push them beyond that. But when we start to move them from that space to kind of, okay, now they feel like they belong in a place, they feel like they're connected to adults that care about them, they feel like they matter, all of those things are really critical and important when they start to push themselves to see, okay, this work has value for me, this matters. I see that, I have the skill sets, that have these unique currencies, that people are pouring life into me. And, all those things are part of what then helps students begin to move through this kind of externally regulated to internally regulated space where they start to see that they care more about things other than themselves. They want to give back. They want to help people. And I think that's what Yes does really, really uniquely.
That's amazing. I've always been a developmentalist. My background was in child development. I ended up being a psychotherapist, but so I've always looked at people through developmental lenses. And I'm so impressed with you and yourself, just in your own journey that you went from Manchester to South Fayette, and that in itself had to be a major transition. And yet you found your way to be able to decide, no, I can do that. I want to choose that. And so it sounds like everything that you experienced personally, you clearly put into the work that you did, and you've done with Yes. Even the fact that you went to graduate school and realized that, wait, this isn't really who I am. This isn't really what I want to do. I mean, that's what we all have to do. I've always believed it's not so much that we have to be somebody else, but we have to remember who we came here to be and remember all the truths about who we really are. And you have done that, and you've done that over and over again. And clearly you're helping so many kids do that too. And the joy that must bring to you, I can only imagine. Yeah.
Appreciate that, Gil. I appreciate that reflection because I
That's a
am
struggle.
starting to really reflect. Yeah, I'm reflecting as you are kind of making sense of like my own journey. I'm starting to feel like, yeah, you're right. Like there is something that has happened within me that I'm seeing happen with other students, and it's a connected journey.
You were taking yourself on the journey so that you had those skills, even whether you realize it or not. They were there personally that you could relate to these kids in a way that they really needed. And I'm just very impressed. The courage that it took to do all those different choices that you made along that way for yourself is really impressive. And therefore, you got the strength and the ability to say, "Look, you can do this too."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is exactly what I meant when I said earlier about you kind of getting to a place where it's almost like with me sometimes when I'm coaching people and I kind of get to that place where I start seeing myself in that person, which kind of makes for an even stronger bond, I think, as you're kind of going through and working with in this case, working with the teens and everything. When you get to that place, I can see myself in this young kid. And because I know what I was able to do, I know that that potential is in you as well. And so you begin to be able to have those types of conversations with young people.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thank you all for like really affirming that, because it's really helping me feel like the work that I'm doing is meaningful and that it's reciprocal in a lot of ways. So I appreciate that.
What you're doing with these kids is you're kind of taking them back to whatever developmental stages they didn't get to go through in an effective and respectful and honest way. And you're helping them do that. And that's, I mean, that's key to any kind of healing and growth, right? They can't go forward until they can see the truth about who they really are, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you did that.
Yeah, so this is like your pay it forward story, right? When you kind of think about it, remember that movie, Pay It Forward? That's kind of what you're, and I've kind of felt like that almost since the beginning of my meeting you. So just for the some context for the audience, I actually had the opportunity to work for the summer with some of the kids, specifically in the YES program, but they were connected to the Earn and Learn program as well. And it was an incredible experience. They did an entire research project. We talked about social determinants of health. We talked about gentrification and all kinds of things like that. And they brought themselves into the conversation. It was a little bit tricky in the beginning, you know, when you're working with teens, they don't know you, and it's a little bit of reluctance there and all of that. But for the most part, for me, it was a very enriching experience. And yeah, I totally enjoyed myself. And so when we were starting to go down this road and sort of looking at community engagement, and we're thinking, well, what are some of these organizations? Yes, of course, that would be on our list, right? Youth Enrichment Services and all of that. And so and I hadn't spoken with you in what since that summer, like 20
honestly, since that summer, 5
like
years.
5 years, exactly. And then I looked through my phone. I'm like, oh, please let this still be her phone number. And then that's how we got reconnected. So I really, really appreciate the fact that you are here. So we're going to take a quick break at this point, and then we'll come back and we'll dig a little bit deeper and kind of looking at the YES organization beyond. Or when I was on your website, I saw a statement, and it said something to the effect that there's so much more that we have to do. And so we want to come back and have a conversation of all that work that you're projecting to do beyond 2025. So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and resume the conversation. So welcome back to Inflection Point Podcast as we continue our 2025 journey into community engagement and the grassroots of change. In this episode, we are very blessed to have Denise Jones, educational consultant at Youth Enrichment Services in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So we've been having a very in-depth, engaging conversation thus far. So what I'd like to do is kind of continue the conversation. And during the break, I had commented on the fact that when I was on the website, I saw a phrase, and it said something to the effect that we've got lots more to do beyond 2025. So Denise, if you could talk to us about what, especially now, since you're almost winding down your education and, you know, continuing to do this work, where do you see the organization beyond 2025?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. Anita, like you said, you connected with us in 2020, and I think we were at the point where we were just trying to continue to build capacity. I mean, we were really just like, you know, literally hoping we could keep the doors open, and it was just, you know, trying to figure out how we were going to make it. And like I said, YES has grown exponentially. And one of the things that our executive director says, Dr. Jones, is that we kind of almost became victims of our own success because we grew so fast, so quickly, and we didn't have time to like catch up to the kind of change that we were experiencing. So thinking about staff capacity, thinking about our operations, all the systems and things that we had in place, like we're a little bit sort of outdated for the type of, growth and change we were experiencing. So we've had to really grow up in the last couple of years, but we've had a lot of unique opportunities. We've done so much. I mean, a lot of it has been based on getting unique people that have helped to build capacity for YES and create new opportunities. And, Dr. Jones came back to YES full time, I want to say in 2021, 2022. So after COVID, I think he retired and came back as a full-time executive director. So he was really pushing YES to really do more and realizing that we have accomplished a lot in our, 26, 27 plus year history, but there was more that he really saw for YES. And we have not slowed down since he's been back and really been in the driver's seat, really pushing us forward. So I attribute a lot of that growth and vision work to Dr. Jones. And so I think as we reflect on the last 5 years of like the work we've been able to do, it's been incredible. But I think his charge to us is let's not get stagnant. Let's not get complacent. Let's not, settle because we still have lives to change. We have young people that are dying daily. And so our work is not done because we still have lives to transform. We still have young people to save. So a lot of that kind of forward movement is based on this idea of like, yes, we've experienced a lot of growth. We are not the same yes we were 5 years ago, but that does not mean that we get too caught up in the celebration, that we really need to, we accept the small wins, but we think about, okay, what else does YES need to be doing? And so we continue to reinvent ourselves. That is the unique thing about YES, is that we're always finding ways to be responsive to community needs, that we try to find ways to not feel like we've done all that we can do. I will say that we are continuing to access federal funding and resources. We're working really closely with the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, supporting a lot of the violence prevention work. So those federal dollars have given us the ability to really think about YES beyond the more local platform, but really seeing ourselves, beyond the kind of Pittsburgh context. We have done a lot of work statewide and regionally, and we're looking to have more of that national impact and really to grow our national footprint, try to find ways to continue to get in spaces that are beyond just kind of the local context. I'll say that part of what we want to do is think about like what are the new ways that we can be innovating ourselves and reinventing ourselves as we move into this next decade. So we did just celebrate our 30-year history in 2024. So that was a big deal for us, getting to the point of our 30-year celebration. But a lot of what we want to do is continue to grow our, kind of research efforts and our enrichment efforts, and continue to find ways to be more impactful with our workforce development model, trying to find ways to get our diversion and restorative practices work, really continue to build our capacity for that. We still serve as the sole provider of diversion services for youth between 10 and 18. We have an aftercare model that we've been, kind of implementing and using over the last 25 years, but we have not gotten anybody to adopt that. And really, we almost have, the students have to almost commit a crime in order for us to help them. But once they're done with their probation status, and it's like, okay, we don't want to pay for their services anymore, but we know how valuable that kind of aftercare work is. So we're trying to really test our extended diversion model and trying to build capacity and efficacy around that model, so that way we can get states to adopt that work. I think, like I said, we've been a leader in the youth kind of violence prevention space around the state. So I can see us really continuing to build our capacity there. The work we continue to do with Partner for Work, like I said, we do really stellar work in the summer through our kind of workforce efforts. We've really built our kind of year-round employment model. I see that growing it even further. I think one of the new programs we have is our Fun Fitness involving sports and health, really using sport for development as a critical vehicle for addressing violence, trying to move students out of this kind of space that's impacted by violence, and really leveraging sport as a vehicle for growth and development for young people. So that's something we started that program, I want to say 3 years ago, and we had about 70 students each cohort. In this last cohort, we had over 270 people that applied for positions. So we see that work, continuing to grow. So there's a lot of stuff that's on the horizons. We've really transformed our research, our research profile, And so we attend conferences pretty regularly. We represent our work. We really leverage the kind of community-based laboratory that we have and continue to be involved in the science and be a part of the scholarly community. So we're doing a lot of work and we're growing. And so I think that, Dr. Jones has about a few more years in him, and then he's really trying to say, okay, I'm trying to hand over the torch. And I guess maybe I'll stop there if you have questions before I kind of talk about how I see myself being a part of the next iteration of Yes.
Yeah, and actually, I'd like you to talk about something else that I had picked up on the website about the motivational model. And it was somewhere along the line where it was a discussion or just alluding to this idea of moving from that external motivation as I have to versus internal motivation, which says I want to. So if you could kind of talk about that motivational model a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So through my master's research, I was really interested in understanding, like, why is it that youth are attracted to Yes? Why is it that they are not only attracted, but that they're like staying in this space? Like, young people can be anywhere. What is it that's unique about Yes? We were seeing students come back every year and year after year, and I'm like, young people move with their feet. Like, if they don't want to be somewhere, they do not stay in that space. So the fact that we're seeing like consistent repeaters and folks that are engaging with Yes, like, there's something unique about this that we need to understand. So through that master's research, I was able to find out that, it is that what's attracting students to this context and what is keeping them there. And so at the time I didn't have kind of the motivational language. So we partnered with a scholar that helped us make sense of kind of what we were seeing through the data that I was gathering and just our other Yes work. We were able to see, okay, oftentimes students are coming to Yes because they have to, whether it's economically motivated reasons, whether they're coming because they're court appointed and they're working in our diversion program. Like, there are a lot of reasons that bring them because enforcing almost young people to be a part of our space. And some people see that as like a weakness. So some people, oh no, kids are only coming because they're getting paid or because they're coming because of, they're forced to be there. They have to be there. But we see that as a strength because what we do is try to say, okay, even though you're forced to be here or you're the way that you got here is maybe not because of your own will, but we really want to change how you stay in the space and how you engage in the space. And I think that's been our sweet spot of understanding the work that we do to really kind of have students develop those sort of intrinsic motivational elements and to see that kind of shift where students see themselves, like I said, differently. They see themselves being nurtured and fed in a way that they want to get back. They want to stay connected. They want to continue. They become curious about learning. It's not even about the money anymore. It's about, how can they take advantage of the unique opportunities that are going to push them forward in a way that will help them in their post-secondary careers and to be those change agents. So, like I said, we don't look at it as a weakness that young people come because of these externally fueling reasons, but we really want to. Now, if a student is leaving us and saying, oh, I'm only been here because I'm getting the money, like, we feel like we fail. But it's like, how can you get in our space and really be transformed in a way that really helps you see yourself differently and helps you engage differently?
Mm-hmm. So, Gail, I think this kind of conversation around this idea of motivation is probably something that you can really relate to as well.
Well, right. I mean, you have to feel that motivation. It's like, Denise, when you were in graduate school and you realize that this is not the direction I wanted to go in, that motivation wouldn't have been there if you'd pushed yourself to do that, right? But you discovered, and you went out on the discovery path of figure out what it is that you really did want to do. And it may have taken a little bit of time to do that. You found it. But what you're providing for these kids is the opportunity to look within and to really go a little bit deeper to find what's going to motivate them. What are their skills that they may not even realize that they have, probably, and providing the structure and the settings and so forth and the tools then that they can learn how to go and accomplish that. That's what keeps kids involved and engaged, right? Because they then feel that desire and that passion, that interest in it, and they see the success that they are getting step by step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Excellent.
It is about motivation. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we can shift the conversation a little bit. You started to kind of go in that direction before I asked about the motivational model. Let's hear you talk about your personal journey and what do you think that's going to look like going forward?
Yeah, so I think my dissertation work will really will help me figure out like what path I want to go. So what I'm looking at is trying to better understand how Black youth transition from adolescence to adulthood and how they draw on community-based resources to support those developmental transitions. So I'm looking at young people who were former guest participants and trying to figure out, how are they describing their developmental experiences? How are they understanding the types of opportunities that were available to them at Yes, and then how are they utilizing those resources and supports as that kind of supportive tissue and connective tissue as they were sort of moving into their adulthood spaces. So I think through this project, I'm going to do a lot of learning that will help me think about how do we want to position Yes. I think that I'll probably continue to pursue research and do some work in the learning sciences. So I don't know if I'll come back to Yes as a kind of director. I see myself coming back to Yes maybe later in my career, but I think in speaking with Dr. Jones about, having those conversations, I think there's a lot more I think that I want to try to accomplish on that sort of larger platform now that I think will help me to then come back to Yes in the latter part of my career to really kind of think about pushing the work forward. But I do see myself always as an advisory member of Yes and really being able to kind of push us and position us forward. So I still see myself deeply involved, but maybe not just like literally sitting in the office in East Liberty. Like I think that I'll be doing some work on a broader platform that will help Yes advance, but I won't be on the ground kind of doing the work locally in the space. So I think that's kind of where I see myself. But I think a lot of the learnings that I'll do will help to inform, kind of how Yes will be positioned. I think it'll be continuing to find the right people that have a heart and a passion for the mission and the work, continue to, position Yes to receive opportunities and resources that will allow us to keep doing that work. But I do see myself eventually coming back to Yes, but not for a little while. So that's kind of my plan. But I'm telling you, I never had it in that. I never had a plan to go back to graduate school. I never had a plan to pursue a PhD, and here I am doing those things. I mean, I could be next year sitting here, I guess, and moving things forward. So I never want to say never, but I think that's kind of what my dad gave me the license to feel like I didn't have to come right back to Yes and jump back into it. He gave me the kind of freedom to say, okay, I want you to feel like you can go here and go to the places you want to go. And Yes will always be here. I mean, there's ways that I can consult and be supporting, kind of the work from afar, but not feeling like I have to be right back in East Liberty, moving and shaking.
But you're doing what you want these kids to do, right? You're giving yourself permission to just explore and develop on what's motivating you and the desires that you have. And that's the goal, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
The work has to happen at many levels, right? And you're just going into a different level, but that's all.
Right. So there was something else that jumped out at me when I was reading your bio. And it's in the paragraph where you're talking about your, working on getting your PhD in education and psychology from the University of Michigan. And then it says you are building a post-secondary pipeline for youth of color. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and what you mean by that? And what is your motivation behind that?
What I did when I left Allegheny was say like, okay, how can I, connect young people to the type of opportunity that I had here? Like I was so frustrated by my dad saying like, go to Allegheny, kind of get your feet wet, get your experience, and then you can think about going anywhere else you want to go later. But after that experience, I mean, it was just one of the best types of, college experiences I had. Like it just nurtured me in a way that really helped me transition from that kind of high school context to really grow my capacity as a scholar and as an intellectual in that space. I felt like it was the right size and the right support. So I started to build really intentional connections with folks at Allegheny. So I was able to get a bunch of our former students at Yes to get into Allegheny. They were able to go there, they were able to get funding, resources. And so through there, I'm, kind of creating the sort of partnerships and the resources that can get those students to that space. Those students have since graduated, and it's like really been amazing to see those students graduate. These are students, once again, who did not see themselves as college material, that couldn't imagine college for themselves. So it was like, okay, how can I keep utilizing my resources, my networks to try to help students access different tables and experiences and now that those students have graduated from Allegheny, those students are now pursuing PhDs. And so it's like, it's phenomenal to see how, almost paving the way for these students to kind of follow this similar trajectory. So when I say building that pipeline, it's like whatever space I'm in, I'm going to utilize the resources. I'm going to utilize the university space. I'm going to kind of get tricky with what's available to me and figure out how I can really use these resources as a way to create more space and room for people to have a seat at the table. And so it's important for me to not just be taking advantage of spaces, going to Columbia, going to Michigan without saying, how can we get more young people in these seats, in these spaces? One of the things I tell students, if there's not a seat or a table, build the table, find the seat. And so a lot of what I'm trying to do with my own scholarship and my own kind of motivation, my own life calling, is find ways to get young people access and opportunities. And so whatever space I'm in, I plan to do that. And even when I leave those spaces, I'm going to try to draw on those resources and make it possible for students.
Yeah, wow.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So if I were somebody who was just struggling and just trying to figure who I am out, figure my life out, and what is my path, what kind of advice would you give to me?
Yeah, so sorry, ask that question one more time. I'm just immersing in all the things.
Yeah, so if I was someone who, I don't know, let's just say you randomly just met me and, I started sharing my story with you, some of the struggles that I might have been having academically, or some of those struggles that I may have been having in terms of just really understanding who I am, some of those struggles I might be having in terms of determining like what is my path and that sort of thing. So if you were coaching me, what kind of advice would you give to me under those circumstances?
Yeah, I would definitely, kind of cause cause you to kind of just stop worrying and get to a place of just reflection, deep reflection. I think I had a lot of clarity in moments of reflection. So I would have you reflect on your journey up to this point. I would have you think through things that were, challenging moments, things that were joyful moments, things that were positive experiences. And I would say, okay, let's try to figure out how to make sense of these types of opportunities and the things that you've done and things that you maybe have hopes to do. So we'd almost pull out the flip chart and start kind of piecing things together and like, okay, this connects to this, try to help do some of that sense making. And then I think from there, I would say, okay, what do you feel like you haven't quite accomplished yet? Or what are you feeling like you want to do? And then I think when students can define that for themselves, then I'll say, okay, let's figure out what you need in order to do that. So I would start to figure out, okay, what are the resources? Where's the location? Who do you need on your team? What are the types of experiences do you need? And so in a lot of ways, I've done that with young people. If you're feeling any kind of doubt or fear or worry, I would try to kind of sort of reshape and reimagine your kind of thought process and help you see yourself differently. Try to continue to push on some of the ways that you're viewing your perspective of yourself. And then I would, like I said, try to find the resources and access to help you get to that place. So I think a part of it, like part of what I always like the students to see is like, understand self, understand the things that you've experienced, understand the things that have really been exciting, things that have been frustrating, because even those moments of frustration will help fuel you into places of great purpose. And so I would help the students really see themselves differently, figure out, okay, what is it that you really need to, kind of pursue based on what I'm hearing you say from that sense making exercise. I know, for example, I had one student who lost a brother, was shot, killed, and burned. And it was just such like tragic, just tragedy that he had to experience. But now he's, advocating for gun violence, and he's, on the front line of, advocating for different political change to occur as it relates to youth gun violence in the city of Pittsburgh. And so in those moments when he was trying to run from that place of pain and fear. And it was like, once we kind of got to it, it's like, I really feel a deep commitment to trying to do this work. So now, how do we get you in the place where you have the tools, the resources, and the capacity to do that work? So I think that's kind of what I would offer as some advice and counsel.
And that was wonderful. And that was a beautiful way. We're just about out of time, but that was just a beautiful way to end this conversation. And I commend you in who you are the work that you're doing and the difference that you are making in young people's lives. And you are not even done yet. You're just getting started. And once you kind of get out of that space of being in grad school and all of that, and you really, really stand there and get your feet on solid ground of what your next direction is, I can't wait to see that moment. So I want to thank you, Denise, for spending time with us and letting us to kind of get to know a little bit about you and your journey. And at this point, we're going to kind of close out, and I always close out with a quote. So I actually have two quotes today, but they both are from the poet Amanda Gorman. And the first quote is, "We are the good news that we have been looking for, demonstrating that every dusk holds a dawn disguised within it. Today, we don't burst into a new world, we begin it." And then the second quote is, "We lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know that our future first, we must first put our differences aside." And so I wanted to kind of leave with something very powerful like that. And it kind of puts me in this whole entire mindset around the Cairo question. Like, we've been asking this question since the beginning of our podcast. Will Cairo, who is now 5 years old, that's my grandson, have to fight in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? The answer to that question is embedded in each one of us. Because it is possible to imagine a future that is free from the shackles of divisiveness and meaningless conversations and all of that. And the bottom line is, we all have a role to play. So to the audience, I thank you so much for joining us in this conversation on Inflection Point Podcast. We are here every first and third Wednesday of the month on Transformation Talk Radio. And our final call to action is that we actually have Inflection Point Podcast private Facebook page, which you are invited to attend. And it's under the name of Inflection Point Podcast. So I thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Inflection Point Podcast, where our mantra is cultivating change from the inside out. The journey towards anti-racism and social change doesn't stop here. Truth, reconciliation, and healing come from ongoing, open, honest, and deliberate conversations. Continue to dive in and deconstruct your thoughts, ideas, and beliefs as we band together to manifest social change. Tune in to Inflection Point Podcast every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more conversations about how we can cultivate change from the inside out.